Following the compromises on health care, finance reform, and don't ask, don't tell, it looks like the Obama White House, as Mike was just kind of referring to right there, will now waiver on the Bush tax cuts as well. They call it a compromise, of course. And speaking of waivers, the administration has already granted over 100 health care waivers to employers, insurance companies, and unions that cover over 1 million Americans. That means those companies don't have to actually implement the new health care rules. Wow, the White House making a deal with powerful companies to game the system. Didn't see that coming. But if you think that's bad, wait till you get a load of this next story. President Obama has granted a waiver on using children to fight wars. So which countries got the waivers? Oh, only Sudan, Yemen, Chad, and the Congo. Why? Well, according to a presidential memo to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, it is in our, quote, national interest to keep sending military aid to those nations despite their failure to end the practice of using child soldiers and comply with the rules passed by none other than President George W. Bush in 2008. When you can't keep up with George Bush's war ethics, you know you've sunk pretty low. Josh Trevino is a Republican strategist, and Joe Conason is a national correspondent with the New York Observer and a columnist with Salon.com. All right, you know what, Joe, you're here. Let me start with you. And let's talk about what we just talked about there. Waivers, exemptions, compromises. Does the White House have the memo that it might be an interesting thing to do every once in a while to stand up?
Well, you know, Cenk, this has been my complaint about this White House almost from the beginning, that the president's obsession with bipartisanship has basically emasculated him in dealing with the Republicans. I mean, when you sell half of what, or give away half of what you're supposed to be selling before you get to the deal, who's going to make a deal with you? They will push back every time. And the START treaty issue that you were talking about before is the perfect example of this. This is a treaty that every Republican Secretary of State has endorsed. Dick Lugar has endorsed. Every responsible person involved with foreign policy knows that this is essential to our national security and our strategy for nonproliferation. And yet, and by the way, John Kyle was complaining last year that it wasn't moving fast enough. But now they suddenly realize they have a little more power. They're not as weak as they were, the Republicans, last year. And, you know, so they're going to push back every time on this guy because I think they know the president can't really take a punch.
That's a strong statement that I totally agree with. All right, now, Josh, look, let's talk about the START treaty, because if there is a real objection, I don't get it. Is there a principled objection to the START treaty, or is this just politics?
Well, before I answer your question, I have to ask, how's the Carter administration going for you, Cenk?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's going terribly. I mean, look, it's weakness. Yeah. I mean, I know people hate that comparison, but well, if you don't want that comparison, stand up every once in a while.
Well, look, you know, if I were a Democrat, which I'm obviously not, I would be absolutely with you. It's a weak president. It's a president who has a very unsure grasp on his own agenda, and it's a president who politically gets rolled time and time again, and it shows up in the election results. Look, to directly answer your question, there are some legitimate critiques of the existing of the new START treaty, and they depend on which side of the ideological spectrum you're coming from. But in brief, you know, the three substantive critiques are the limitations on missile defense, the limitations on conventional, not nuclear, but conventional weapons delivery systems, and then a weekend verification system versus the previous START. Now, on the political side, the president is trying to push through the first major arms control treaty in a lame duck session ever. And that's not something that's going to fly. A little bit more political competence, a little bit more reaching out to amenable Republicans would have precluded all of this. What Kyle is doing, what Senator Kyle is doing, should not be a surprise to the president, but it is, and that is an indication of a broken White House political machine.
I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise to them because, of course, the Republicans are going to not agree to it. But look, Josh, I got to challenge you on that more. First of all, I think the substantive criticism of START is honestly absurd. I mean, look, is a treaty ever going to be perfect? Of course not, because it's a treaty. You negotiate with them. I mean, without the treaty, we can't even do verification of their program. It's a terrible idea. My sense of it, honestly, is that the Republicans are not honest actors. They don't care about the treaty. I mean, they don't care about the national security. They care about the politics, and they're going to block the president for political reasons.
I'm trying to think back of when you did think the Republicans were honest actors, Cenk. The fact of the matter is that accusing one side or the other of not caring about national security is neither accurate nor helpful. There are legitimate and differing views on whether START, the new START, is necessary and useful. And frankly, it strikes me as somebody who,
necessary?
Honestly, it doesn't matter
really?
whether
Not necessary to renew this treaty? Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding at all, because we don't live in a Cold War world. This START treaty would have been very, very good in, say, 1978. It is 2010. It's a multipolar world. You're talking about a bilateral treaty with a nation that we are no longer in a global face-off with. I mean, if you want to live
today.
back in that universe.
What's the downside, Josh?
They still have the weapons.
Joe, are you positing, though, that Russia is the once and future enemy?
No, I'm just saying they still have the weapons, and who knows who's going to be in power in Russia at any given moment. It's actually not a particularly democratic country. The future of Russia is not something that one would want to bet on and say, hey, we don't need a nuclear arms treaty with them anymore, aside from the fact that our position in the world as an enemy of proliferation is dependent on the perception of the United States as a country that wants to reduce its own nuclear weapons. You know that. Now, look, conservatives don't agree with that, many of them. And conservatives, have always been suspicious of treaties. The problem with treaties is you have to make them with foreigners. And from the right-wing point of view, that is an inherent problem, but that doesn't mean we don't need them. And every expert who's
like asking Colonel Sanders what chickens think. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. I mean, I have traveled to work and negotiate and talk to over 40 countries, and there are many conservatives who have too. So it's absurd to have somebody who's speaking from a very parochial democratic domestic politics point of view say that conservatives and Republicans don't care about foreigners.
I wouldn't say it that broadly. In fact, as I pointed out at the beginning. As I pointed out in the beginning, I said, look, every Republican expert on this and every Republican former Secretary of State has said, we need to do this now. And there's a reason for that. It's because they've understood for more than 30 years that this is an essential part of our national security strategy on both sides of the aisle among sane people.
Well, look, Joe, either you can say that conservatives and Republicans in general don't care, or you can cite Republican secretaries of state for defense of your position. I mean, which is it? Are we legitimate?
Josh, let me answer that.
I was gently mocking you. I hope you can handle it. Okay?
No, Josh, let me clarify that, okay? Because I don't want people to think that Republican voters don't care or that no Republican cares. Look, Richard Lugar, I think, is on the right side. The former secretaries of state are on the right side. I'm talking about your current Republican politicians. And I'm not saying they don't care about foreign policy or national security at all. But I'm saying it is clear in this case that they're putting politics above that. Are you really telling me, Josh, that this doesn't have to do with politics, that they didn't want to hand some sort of weird defeat to President Obama and go, ha-ha, and that they really had legitimate substantive concerns about this? Come on. Over the politics?
No. Listen, it's all political on both sides. It really is. And yes, this is a defeat that's being handed to the president, which he's acquiescing in, as you rightly point out. Nonetheless, though, the hyperbole over the New START treaty that is necessary to nonproliferation, that is absolutely essential to our national security, is absurd. This is a domestic political football. If START is not ratified, which it's not going to be right now, certainly not in the lame duck session, there's not going to be a new arms race between Russia and the United States. And this isn't utopianism. This is just an accurate assessment of what Russia-U.S. relations look like and where they're likely to go. I have to dissent from what Joe's saying, painting this picture of a dangerously volatile Russia. Look, Russia is essentially a semi-fascist state at this point, and unfortunately, one of the byproducts of that is that it's got a pretty stable regime. We're going to see some combination of the Putin-Medvedev combination in power for a long, long time to come. That's not likely to change, and START's not going to affect that one way or the other.
Their stable, somewhat fascist system does not assuage my concerns.
That's not praise for the system, though.
That's right. All right, guys, we got to leave it right there, but it was a hell of a conversation. Josh Trevino and Joe Conason, thank you both. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.